G'day everybody, welcome back to the Marketing Theatre Show. My name is Paul Adams and I am with...
Sheryl-Lee Secomb. That's all.
Sorry, I don't do that pause all the time, but I should probably remind you that I'm going to do it. It's good to see you, good to have you back. Thanks for coming and sharing your expertise with us to help us really tackle what is such a key element in being a creator and being a theatre maker and a performer and a producer and all those things. And, you know, marketing is such a subject that can overwhelm people and get away from us and become too much to sort of think about. So I really appreciate the fact that you're, happy to give your expertise in this way. It's so amazing. So thank you so much for that.
No problems. Always love talking about it.
It's great. So today what we want to dig into is a marketing strategy. And I think over the next couple of episodes, dig down a bit deeper from a marketing strategy down into a marketing plan and really kind of start laying out what that would look like. So I think that, you've mentioned before this concept of marketing strategy and marketing tactics. Define for us in your view, what is the difference between a marketing strategy, a marketing plan, strategy versus tactics? What do those different terms kind of mean when you use them? Just so we can all be on the same page around terminology and what we're referring to.
Well, in its simplest form, if you think of your marketing strategy being the why you're doing it, and your marketing tactics being the how, and in between there sets the goals, and that's where you basically where you measure the results. So your strategy for marketing your creativity or your theatre show, for instance, will involve what the broadest terms. So it might be, okay, to market this show, I'm going to use social media, I'm going to use press, I'm going to use building relationships with my local community, with venue managers, that sort of thing. So on its broadest sense, that's basically the tools you're going to use. You'll build a plan around that will involve, if we drill down to the tactics of that is going to involve perhaps the tactics are the type of posts you might put on Instagram, a competition you're going to run, that sort of thing. So
Great.
Most people tend to start with the tactics because it's the fun and sexy part. It's the strategy you have to start with first.
Yeah. And I think also a lot of people tend to start with those because they're familiar with the usage of those. I'm on social media every day. I get this part of it. That idea of sitting down and mapping out a big strategy goal and a vision across the whole thing. I mean, that's quite overwhelming for a lot of people. I know it has been for me in the past. It becomes something that it's hard to do. It's hard to sit down and kind of get a sense of, I don't even know what I'm thinking, and then where is this going to go? What is that? Question for you in regards to strategy. From show to show, from project to project, would you see that overriding strategy change much? Or would the strategy be more of a standardized approach that you're going to take, and then the specific tactics and the specific plan might change based on the actual project more and more? So is that strategy something that you could do that has a bit more consistency to it, that doesn't really change in that sort of way? Or do you really think you need to sit down and map that out project by project at that level?
Mostly it would remain the same. The things that might change a strategy might involve whether I'm working with an independent artist with a marketing budget, or a community not-for-profit, or someone who is, it comes down to what resources are at hand.
Yeah, right.
But most of the time the strategy remains the same. The why remains the same.
Yeah, so as indie creators and indie producer, the type of work that you're going to produce, the type of resources that you have. So you could literally sit down, put this strategy together based on what you have now, knowing that because you're only going to be producing your work, that's not going to change too much. Very different for someone like yourself who's, operating across many different clients and running an agency style approach. But as an indie producer setting one for ourselves, we can really look at those types of things that we have and set that up. So something we maybe review once a year, review resources that we have, connections that we have, relationships that we have, but we could kind of set that in place and leave it for a period of time.
That's the beauty of it. Once you do it once, then you're, spring cleaning perhaps once a year. But the strategy, it's a framework that you've established, and the consistency of working with that framework will also work in your favor long term as well.
Yeah. In what way? How does that work in the long term for someone?
Take, for instance, you have a strategy element that involves working with the press. If you continue, you drill down to that, set goals and set the tactics of working with the press the same way. And if we go even further down, it will involve the way you develop a digital media pack. If you do that consistently for every production in the same way, over time, journalists become familiar with you. And you're no longer having to work as hard as you build relationships with them. They know what to expect. They know it's going to be professional. And over time, it starts to work in your favor and they come to you, or you're not having to push so hard. So it's the same. Each production you do, the journalist or the press that you work with know that they're going to receive something from you that is useful to them and their audience. And it's not different each time. You're building consistency, which builds confidence.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. And, as we've said before, that strategy is about building long-term relationships, and that is always going to serve you well in the long term. Long-term relationships, long-term benefit, I guess, something makes a lot of sense. So great. So we kind of have a sense of what a strategy is. We have a sense of what the plan sits under the strategy. So that might change show to show because the content's different. Hopefully the target market's not too different if you're running stuff of your own in that sort of way. We know that, we're obviously going to get better results if we're able to have that repeat audience. And the tactics are going to adapt based on the types of media that we are using and the types of communication that we're trying to put out there. So let's really focus on, just hit puberty. Let's just focus on, let's really focus. Yeah. Let's really focus on the strategy. So what are the sort of elements that we are looking to put into a marketing strategy?
Let's start from the beginning. This is the way I do it. When I'm developing the creativity, the thinking creatively, I can't work on my computer. I have to get a marker and massive bits of butcher's paper and literally see it in front of me. So I'll have the floor covered and I'll map it out.
I'm the same.
Side of me, you are? The creative side of me needs to be able to write it out with my hand.
I want the space.
Yes, that's right. When I get to the admin side, when I'm organizing and project management, then I can go to my computer. But I just have always been the same. I can't. And when I'm writing, I can. I've got down to being able to write on my computer now. But in the early days, it was writing pen to paper was fed my creative soul. I don't know. There's just something about it. But I tend to, big pieces of paper and the pen. Like to see it, and set out your business objectives. So in other words, you've got to know why are you doing this. And most people go to sell tickets, which is a valid point, but it's not the only one. So as a theatre company, you are an objective within your marketing strategy. Your first objective will be to sell tickets to your show, but it's also going to be building authority, and when I say authority, I mean finding place within the industry or your community as a theatre company. So
I think that's I'm just going to jump in there. That's a really interesting point, because what we're starting to see is that the concept of the strategy relates more to the company and the provider of the entertainment rather than the show itself. So this is more that overriding strategy of what are you as a creator, as a producer, wanting to achieve over the long term, as opposed to how am I going to market this individual show. So the types of strategy that we're talking about is actually about why am I producing shows at all, not just this show. Would you say that's more the level we're thinking at? Yeah.
Absolutely. I push this home with creatives all the time, is the objective is to build a self-sustaining career. and
Yes.
you can't do that.
Yes.
Yes. So it's building a hierarchy. If you looked at this bit, going back to the butcher's paper, you're building a hierarchy, and the person at the top is, if you're looking as an individual creative, it's you. You
Yes.
are the grandfather brand, or grandmother brand, whatever you like, but you are the top brand for this. The shows that you produce are and I don't want creatives to go, but the shows are the product, your product of
Yes.
your business, your company. So if you are the founder of a theatre company, then your theatre company is under you. You are still, as an independent creative, still the primary brand. So then underneath that is your shows. So the shows change. So if you start the objective with just the show, you're A, missing a step, but B, you're not building your creative career.
Yeah.
You're just promoting a show. You're just being an advertising agency. It's
Yeah.
not enough.
No, I think that's so crucial. I think that's so key. And that's just, for me, something that, I think that sense of being, even if you only see yourself as, I mean, it sounds horrible to say only as, there's never just only as, but that sense of, if I've only ever approached it in my mind that I am a cabaret performer that's putting on a cabaret show, I'm only ever going to think from show to show. And we really do need to elevate our thinking to that next level so that we really set something bigger vision beyond that. For me, the ultimate goal is to have my media empire, in inverted commas, so that I have complete freedom of my time, that I can wake up in the morning and say, I know I'm being successful when I get to choose what I do today. I don't have to go to this day job because I need to pay the bills. That's a thing of that's where I'm heading. That's where I'm aiming for. I don't know how long that's going to take, but that's the goal. And, the faster we can shift and elevate our thinking into that level, the better we're going to get traction and start to see that change the way that we approach things as well. So super important, super important.
I think it's important too to remember that none of this happens in isolation, this strategy building. That's why I have, a huge amount of the work that I do with clients is talking through their strategy and building it out, because the discovery of this very subject and the ownership of this self-ownership of this comes through discussion. It doesn't happen in isolation in your own brain. So I think that's important to understand, is find a friend, talk it through, and that's where you'll discover what your objective is, what your true objective is, and start to understand that it starts with you, not with the production that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I just want to tag onto the back end of that, just another thing of this whole concept is, it is so easy to think we have to do it ourselves. We are not islands. We shouldn't be islands. You are wonderfully generous with your skill, your expertise, and there are lots of other people out there who are the same, who, if you need some help and support to be able to get some guidance through this process, you will find someone. And taking that idea of making it about who, not how am I going to do this, but I know I'm not good at that. So how can I find someone who can help me do it? And that's so key. And I don't think we think that way enough. It's that, we want to get help, but we're always, I'm asking someone to do something for free again. It does sort of make us feel that we're pulling stuff out of people for free all the time. But, there are just things that we are good at and things that we are not good at. And, I think being able to get that sense of who can help me do this is so important. It's such a great point.
That's right. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So strategy, thinking about the why. So what is it that I want to get out of this in the long term from producing these shows and whatever those shows become? What is the ultimate goal? Is it about owning creativity 100% of my day, or having the freedom to produce what I want when I want, building income, building an audience? It might be, you might work it out that your strategy might actually be to create work that you can sell to somebody else. I mean, you could license your show off to somebody else. I mean, that's definitely another strategy. So this is great. So high level thinking, what am I actually aiming for? And that might change over years. You might start with one idea now, and that's okay. Work towards that.
And I think that's the very point. You've just highlighted what's important about starting with a hierarchy that starts with you, because how you build a self-sustaining career is going to change over time.
Yeah.
And what you measure as success is going to change, but it will also be unique to you. So if you measure your success based on that production, your strategy starting with that production, and it's going to be selling 500, 1,000 seats, and that's your measure of success, that's placing your understanding of success for you personally on an external source, which is not healthy. But B, once that project is over, you start again. So if you are starting with the strategy is, okay, my goal, my strategy is to build a long-term self-sustaining artistic career. Underneath that, I've developed a production company, a theatre company, some sort of entity that represents me in the creation of these products, these shows. Underneath that, at the moment, underneath that theatre company is a fluid range of items, which will be changed from year to year, which will be perhaps theatre productions or cabarets or whatever performing element there is. But also along that, you've got all these little bits along here, these little umbrellas along here. You have, as you said before, you've got evergreen products that might be teaching, online teaching. It might be a training product. It might be or anything else that you like that is drawn out of that. But they all change. They're all fluid, which means that you're diversifying to begin with. And then that's a part of the strategy. Then you're setting goals for each of those. And the goals are all going to be different. And I'm getting off track now because the mind just sort of goes like this. I had a conversation just like this with a client yesterday. And talking, he was great on this, but the question he asked me was, okay, how do you do all of this without seeming wanky? Which was his very terms. And I thought that's such a great way of putting it, because I find creatives think like that because we're so unfamiliar with thinking about our careers on business terms.
Yeah.
And as a marketer, that's exactly what you're doing. By setting the subjective and the goals, we are separating the things we create, and this is going to be really testy. We're separating the things we create from ourselves personally. They are part of us, yes, because we have this emotional attachment to them. But if we can somehow look at them from the outside in, we can make more objective marketing and business decisions that will be more productive, I have found over.
Yeah. And I think, so going back into the types of things to put in the strategy, and I think this is the thing that a lot of us don't consider, is that high level thinking about making money. We don't actually, like, we think, oh, we'll sell some tickets, but what is the strategy beyond that? What is the multiple income streams that could potentially come out of this one product, this one show? How is it that we are going to, the strategy might simply be to start with by, every show will break even as a minimum. What do I need to do to make sure that happens? Because then when you get down into the plan level, that forces you to think about, well, how many tickets do I have to sell in order to break even? And that becomes the benchmark that you're looking for. And so this higher level strategy is about, it all comes back to those goals. And if your goal is to become a sustainable creative producer, performer, whatever, that has to be a part of it. It has to be a part of it. And I think you're so right that we're scared of that. We're so scared of thinking in those terms, but we have to. We have to.
We have to. For so long in this country, the independent industry we've performed more like charities than business people.
Yeah.
which means that it's
So
all very well to give away everything, but you cannot build a sustainable career out of that.
No.
You can give away a lot when you have a sustainable career.
Yeah. And there's effort required to go beyond who we know. I mean, you touched on it in a couple of our chats now about how so often people promote only to the people that they know. And I had a conversation yesterday with an actor friend, because we're working on a new show at the moment. It's a murder mystery dinner theatre thing, so it's all very COVID appropriate, sort of small numbers. But he was saying that he emceed a show for someone, and just out of curiosity on a couple of the nights that he did that, asked, who here does not know somebody in the cast or crew? And he said both nights, no hands went up. Everybody in that room was a friend or a family member. There was nobody beyond that spectrum of people. And you're not going to grow. You're not going to make money that way. It's just
two things in there for me is always comes up. And the first one is the lack of belief that there is an audience out there that wants your product. And there is. There is huge community out there that does want what you are offering. They want to see what, they want to be spending their money on entertainment. They do.
Yeah.
They do what want. The other thing is, and I've got to, I've lost my train of thought, Paul, off there. That, and they want to see, but also, no, it's gone. Isn't that terrible?
It'll come back to you.
Down to not enough wine before.
We should do this with a glass of wine. That would be amazing.
That would be a whole different podcast.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's definitely something we're going to have to dig into, and it's that mindset too. That difference between, I mean, we're talking, high level strategy, marketing at strategy level, that kind of stuff. When a lot of people think marketing, they're actually thinking advertising. That really comes down into advertising a show, and we do need to separate that. Marketing for me is that overall reputation, the brand awareness, the long-term goals, how you're growing and building the business a long time. Marketing plays into all of that, and definitely plays into the way that you market and advertise the shows. But a lot of people get into the mindset of marketing purely thinking of it really in terms of advertising. How are we going to sell the show? And that's really advertising. And what we're talking about is the longer term stuff that's going to have an impact over time, which means you need to start now.
Yes.
You need to start now.
It does. It does. Regardless of whether it's a brand new theatre company, or one that has been around for a while but hasn't really got traction, it will take you 12, 18 months to build a brand. You can get traction in 3 months with consistent work, but that's long term, and then you never stop. It's a constant thing.
That's right.
Whereas the advertising changes, as you just said, based on the show. It's a tactic. Yeah,
love it. All right, let's backtrack again into strategy level thinking, types of things that we're going to put into our strategy. So we're talking visionary goals of what I want to achieve, limiting goals of what I'm not going to do. I guess that sense of, I'm not going to run a show that doesn't. Well, am I investing? I guess for me, from a financial point of view, you might make the decision that it's okay to not make money on this and this show, the next 2 or 3 shows, because the focus of that is actually to build an audience. Perhaps that's leading to a point where show 3 will at least, make a X number of ticket profit or whatever. I personally don't want to run a show that doesn't at least break even when I'm starting out, because then you don't have that money coming back in to reinvest in the next show. I think that's really important. So what are some of those other sort of strategy level goals and things that you would put into that marketing strategy?
Starting from that, it's sort of like, what sort of venue am I going to be working in? So if I'm, developing shows that are small, interactive, and perhaps mobile or touring, that's a whole different strategy for how you gain an audience, as opposed to a fixed venue or a consistent venue with a larger audience. If you're in a consistent venue, the strategy is going to involve building a growing relationship with the community that is geographically around that venue.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a touring company, that's not a strategy. It's not a strategy that will necessarily sustain you. It's for the company, I think, as we go back to the original one, you're building authority consistently, a brand of who you are and the fact that you're there. And the other part of that strategy is selling tickets. You might even incorporate your own personal brand, depending on how much of you is in the theatre company.
Yeah.
Or you might run that along your personal brand alongside if you're a performing artist. You've got the theatre company, but you also have your own personal career, which might not necessarily be within that theatre company as well. You might have a film career going on at the side.
Yes.
So in that strategy, how wide am I going to build this? Is it going to be restricted to an online presence? And everyone needs an online presence. Nowadays, you can't build it without it.
Yeah.
But you've got to be offline as well. So when I go building an offline presence around, is it going to be building relationships with large industry? The education industry is, anything within my strategy involve education that I can then, make part of tertiary or secondary education? Does it involve writing, as in, or creating training, online training, writing book, all this sort of thing?
Yeah.
So it's the idea of that top level thinking before you get down to how you're going to achieve that. Most of what I do tends to focus online at this level because without, as I've just said, without the online presence, your career really doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's so fluid now. The idea of not having a website or some kind of online presence, it's just so foreign to people. I mean, you look at any other industry, the first thing people do is they go online to try and research you. They're going to go and find a website. They want to find reviews. They're going to find some kind of online presence. So you need to prepare for that. So part of the strategy definitely needs to be how you're going to represent yourself online. Has to be part of that strategy. I think the other thing that for me is a really important part of the strategy is to really, and we've talked about this before, is to really understand who your target audience is. Yeah. It's so key because that actually then drives so much of the other decision making that you have, how you communicate, where and when you communicate. It's really driven by who you're communicating to. That's going to drive the decision around which relationships are worth building, which people and businesses are worth pursuing, because you want to try and get that to all feed each other and feed into each other. So, and it's so foreign to us as creative people to think that I have to choose a single target market. And it doesn't clarify that it's not a single target market forever. No. Pick one at a time to think about. And, if you're a cabaret performer, there are going to be a number of different types of people that want to come and watch that cabaret show. Honing in on who those different types of people are is so important, because then you can shape your communication, shape your relationship building to people, services, businesses that can all serve that same target market. And it just creates other opportunities for you. So that's a big one for me.
That's how you're tying in strategy to how it affects so many different elements of this plan too, is talking about audience and the cabaret audience. In your strategy, you determine you're going to think, well, I can create the product first and then try and find an audience for it.
Yeah.
Which is one way of doing it.
It's what most people do.
That's what most people do, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But what if in your strategy thinking, you flipped it on your head and thought, the pub scene has a constant, always looking for entertainment. What if you created cabaret or interactive work that was set within pubs or RSLs or sort of thing, sort of thing. And so that determines the sort of product you create.
Mm.
So you're finding the venue and the audience first and creating something that they
Yeah.
want. It's two different ways of looking at it, and an entirely different approach.
Yeah, and not forgetting to do a bit of research around that idea. You've got to validate that idea first, and really that's a whole different subject. But
Yeah.
but it is that idea of here's a pub, here's a club. I think this would fit here. You need to go and have those conversations. You need to have those validating conversations that tell you whether or not that will work, and how open they are to it, and how much they understand what it is that you're thinking would fit there, and how do you shape that conversation. And you can really only have that by going out and having those conversations. Having that kind of portfolio of your work can help as well. If you've got a couple of shows that you've done, video clips of the work that you've done before that you can show them, and again, now we're talking how to sell it to a venue in some sense, but being able to not just come up with an idea and go, yeah, I'll go and pursue that before you validate it, that's so important, because you don't want to waste all that time if you're going to do that way. I mean, as you said, most of us will create work that we want to create and then try and find the audience for it. But that audience, as we've talked about, generally falls into our friends and family, because we don't apply any kind of business mindset to how we grow an audience, how we get an audience. And that's definitely something that I'm going to be covering in other kind of conversations, maybe on here. We probably need to cover it on here. There's definitely stuff that I'm going to be covering through the Business of Art videos on the YouTube channel as well. So, if you're interested in that sort of thing, then head over to the Business of Art on YouTube, and there might be some videos there by the time this airs. But taking that idea of, I have a show and a style of show that I want to do, and then coming backwards from that into applying strategy to it, I think, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think that the idea is still the same, is that you need to look at that show and who are the types of people, who are the audiences that are going to be interested in seeing that show, and then working through those things again from there. That's
right. Your audience is, depending on the sort of work that you create. As a theatre company, you might, this is where it gets very specific to a client. If it's a theatre company that was created to satisfy a particular bias.
What do you mean by bias?
Well, for instance, you might be wanting to create political activism,
gotcha.
Gender biases, any of those sorts of things, and that's the sort of work that you create, then that really tells you who your audience is to an extent. It's much, much harder if you're a theatre company that's creating a very broad range of theatre, because your audience is constantly changing. And of course, so many of us make the mistake of saying, well, everyone is my audience. And that's simply not true, because, if you're promoting to everyone, you're promoting to no one. So understanding your ideal audience is, when I go in and I'm promoting a show for a company, I have to understand the show, and of course you as a theatre creative are going to understand that show. So finding your ideal audience and not marketing as yourself. When we go into this, we have to market as our audience, not as ourselves. So the easiest way for me to explain this is, if I was promoting a show for teenagers, then I have to make sure in examining and developing my plan, examine my biases, my understandings that come with my age, that I'm not marketing as, mother of teenagers rather than teenagers. And so that determines the type of publications you might be approaching. It's where you're promoting. We tend to market and talk as ourselves. So finding your ideal audience.
And I just want to touch on just that thing you said before about doing lots of different types of work. It is possible for a company or an artist to do lots of different types of work, but to simplify your ability to grow your audience, you really need to go through and look for the threads of commonality in the audience type to start with. I think, it's harder to do it that way if you're jumping from a Shakespeare show to an Australian theatre show. You see obviously the big companies, your state theatre companies and that sort of thing. They do that. They have to have a real diverse range of work because they are, serving a monster-sized audience, and people are accustomed to it from that type of entity, that type of production company, that type of theatre. So it's not to say that we as individual producers can't do that as well, but we have to think about that type of person that we're serving who is open to seeing a variety of stuff through there. Somebody who is a hardcore Shakespeare nut probably won't come or might not come and watch the new Australian work that you might produce next. So you have to really think about that. And as you said before, that's the type of thing where it feels like you have to start again because you've gone from one audience and you're now presenting to a different type of consumer. And it's not to say it can't be done, but there's a little bit of extra work and a lot more thinking that has to go around doing that. So
this is where the dual branding comes in. When you are branding, you're branding your theatre company and you're branding the show. And when you forget to brand your theatre company and build relationships as your theatre company, when you switch from show to show, genre to genre, that's where you strike trouble. It doesn't matter how many different genres you cover as a theatre company. If you have built a consistent relationship with your audience, they are more prone to experimenting with you because they trust you, they like you, than if you were an entity they don't know, have no relationship with, you have no personality, they don't care about you, and they are just basically buying your product. It's like the business that sells on price. You have no relationship, no one cares. I don't give a rat's about you, so I don't care what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So that's why it is so important as a brand, as a theatre company, even as an individual creative, to have a relationship with all your audience so that no matter what you present to them, they are more likely to consider things they may not have considered before because it's you and they have a relationship with you. That's why the dual brands.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And so let's kind of recap a few things that we've talked about because we've diverged quite a bit throughout this. So know your audience. Who are you performing for? Who are you presenting to? That might be a wide range of people, but understanding them is so important. So part of your strategy has to be to get a sense of who the audience is, whether that's just a single focused, tight little niche of people that, just love, dark cabaret or, Shakespeare shows, or, for me, the focus at the moment is on, families with kids in primary school, that kind of thing. So focus on who that is. Now, if you're doing a wide range of work, that can be a wide range of people, but know the different pockets, those different buckets of audience in that. I think you just touched on something that we didn't really talk about before, but we really need to think about in our strategy, which is how we're going to communicate with those people. So do you have an email list? Do you have something where you are recording, dare I say it, go to a CRM, like a customer relationship management software? That's often far beyond what we need in the early stages, but having something that captures audience details, email addresses, contact details around, where they live, the suburbs, that kind of stuff. The more detail you can get, the better. But how are you collecting that information and how are you going to communicate? So something as simple as a free MailChimp account or a free ConvertKit account. I mean, there are so many out there that you can get for free now. But how are you storing and how are you going to use that information to communicate with that audience? And we should probably do something later, not tonight, where we talk about actually digging into email marketing and tagging and how to segment that audience so that you can communicate directly with people with relevance, which is another whole sort of discussion. But thinking about who's the audience, how do I store their information, what are the rules and regulations around that? You need to know those as well. You can't just dump them into a file. But and thankfully, a lot of those email softwares like MailChimp, ConvertKit, MailerLite, SendFox, they know the rules. They're built into the way that you can send things. I actually, it's sort of funny story. I did the Easter activity pack recently to generate some emails, and I thought I was doing something really clever because I know people are going to get lots of emails and they're not going to want, necessarily, some people are coming just to get that Easter activity pack, wouldn't have even realized that we were a producing company, that we had shows that we were going to do. And I made the mistake, and I call it a mistake. I made the mistake of putting in the welcome email, and hey, I know that you probably get a lot of emails. So if you don't want to hear from me again now that you've got this activity pack, just unsubscribe. There's a button down below. And I had, this percentage of people unsubscribe because I told them to, and then I got flagged by MailChimp going, this could be an issue. I got an email, which I think essentially the starting one was an automated email from their legal department going, we need to chat to you. And I'm like, what have I done? Yeah. Call to action that worked. So that was the problem. But, so anyway, so there's rules and regs around how we store emails and how we protect that data. So obviously make sure you look into that, but having that. So how are you going to get the information? Where are you going to store it? How are you going to communicate? How often will you communicate with your audience? A lot of companies do a monthly newsletter out to their audience about what's coming up and what they're doing. You can actually communicate with them more than that if you want, if you're providing something of value. So you might not have a show of your own coming up, but you might be able to tell them about somebody else's show that might appeal to them. So you're helping them and you're providing some value to them. You might be able to, do an email. You've talked before about sending information in behind the scenes type stuff that really captures people's attention and their imagination about what it's like to work in the stuff that we do, which most people have no idea about. So you can still do that more regularly, and it doesn't have to just be, hey, here's the next show. And it shouldn't be just, hey, here's the next show. It could be just something like I've actually got a couple of different websites that provide parents with activities and that sort of stuff for their kids that I've subscribed to, because then I might be able to grab something from them and send it to my mailing list of parents to go, hey, here's something really cool that might be of interest to you, because then it's just me providing them some value. So how does all of that then play into the type of work that you create? And what does that mean for the relationships that you might want to build in regards to venues, businesses that might be interested in supporting you, sponsoring you, businesses that you might be able to start out by supporting and going to them and say, hey, I would love to see something happen with this business. Maybe you can target a business and say, hey, look, can we advertise your business as part of our show? And even to start with, just about getting that leverage of relationship, doing it for free so that it doesn't cost them anything, but you're actually providing value to them. This show or this night, whatever, sponsored by this local business, and do that for free. It might be a cafe that you have coffee at all the time. Is there a way for you in your strategy to build a relationship with them that actually provides value back to them? And you touched on some amazing ideas back in, I think it was episode 1 or 2, where you the coffee cup stuff and that sort of thing. Magazines and stuff, providing magazines to a cafe. But, are there businesses that would be of benefit to you, but that you can start by providing some kind of value to first as part of your strategy in the long term? So, yeah.
I think an important part of this is to understand that marketing, think of it more like a megaphone or the loudspeaker of your brand, rather than that everything you do is putting you top of mind, and it doesn't have to be selling anything. And in fact, if you keep your organic online presence as adding value, so you're entertaining, educating, or inspiring, and you're not saying a word, not necessarily not saying a word, but you're not saying buy tickets. You're saying, it's a difference of saying buy tickets to my show. The better way to say it through 80% of what you put online is, we're creating in rehearsals for our show, name of show inserted here, tonight we found. So you haven't said anything about buying tickets. You're building that relationship. And to take underneath all of that, we haven't touched on an objective within your strategy, which is paid advertising. A note in that, the lead up, this is why theatre companies, the longer lead in you have to opening night, the cheaper it will be, or the less expensive it will be, because you'll be able to work more organically. If you have a really short lead up time, it's more expensive because you have to buy advertising to actually get out there. Everything takes so much time, but you can be running Facebook ads underneath everything you're doing, taking care of your promotion for you. Creating lookalike audiences with people who have visited your website or who are on an email list you have. You can be uploading to Facebook, and they'll create an audience that looks like the one that has already interacted with you. So you're not hitting the people who are already your fans. You're finding new ones that have similar interests to the ones you have. So that paid advertising doesn't have to be a lot. And a side note is, people tend to boost on Facebook, which is fine. But a trick with that is to, you're value adding, find a valuable post that did really well and boost it once it's actually got some action, rather than a clean post that has nothing. It'll be more expensive if you go on a clean post. So, and getting used to social media is, don't ghost and post. Post and ghost, rather. Don't just don't post something and then ghost.
Post and ghost. I was thinking, what's ghost and post? I've not heard that one. Post and ghost I have,
So it's building those relationships, that the most valuable time after you've posted something on your social media is the following 30 minutes. Because that's when the interaction comes. That's when you should be following hashtags that are relevant to what you're doing and interacting with the accounts that are posting at that time on those hashtags. And just that's, spending that 30 minutes of after your post of interacting with people who comment on it, all that sort of thing. People who like a post on your Facebook page, when you click on those little icons, it comes up with the list of people who have liked it. And beside that, you'll see a box that says invite. That is a box that is invite them to like your page. Use it. You would not believe, people will do so much when you actually ask them.
Yeah, that's it. Just that simple call to action makes such a difference.
Them to like your page. Ask, don't get.
And don't be upset when they don't like it straight away.
That's right.
The thing, Facebook actually also suggests that you invite them, which is great. So if you go into your notifications, it says, oh, so-and-so just liked this post, invite them to like your page. So you can do that. And I've done that consistently. And there are people who have only in the last week gone in and liked the page and followed the page, who posted some kind of reaction months ago. It just sits there and they don't take any notice of it. So it's a
building relationships.
It's what it's all about. So some really great stuff in there. And so I think that's a really interesting point too, of what is your growth strategy? Part of that strategy being, how do you grow beyond the show? So that sense of, the rehearsal shot that might be about the show that goes really well. You can, I hate just boosting by itself. I always want to do a little bit more with it. But again, you can $1 a day, $5 a day over a period of time to boost a post, and it can make a big difference to who sees that. And the whole hashtag thing, about part of your strategy is knowing what hashtags are relevant. That's great. That's a really, really important one as well, because then when you go into Instagram and you know that you're going to do a post about not just the show, you can know those other hashtags that are going to be relevant. Like for us, hashtag Brisbane. I use hashtag Brisbane artist, hashtag Brisbane theatre, hashtag Brisbane arts. So, all of those little hashtags that have a good following are worth using, because they're bringing general attention to your platform that might not normally see something tagged for the show. And so, you do get a lot of other artistic people that are not connected to you and your family and your friends who want to go and see shows that might be interested. So those people will then bring their friends and that sort of thing as well. So another really great point there. So what I might do is I will put in the show notes a link to a very basic strategy document that will outline a really basic strategy. I think it's important to not be overwhelmed by this, as indie creators, as performers. We're often in that big picture thinking space. We're often in that creative space, and actually sitting down and doing something like this become really overwhelming. So I will link up in the description or the show notes a really basic framework for a strategy document that will just, help you kind of outline the types of things that you want to look at so that you can put pen to paper or finger to keyboard, whatever suits you, and really kind of just jot down a simple starting point for what it is you want to achieve through the work that you do, which I think is so important, because then that will lead on to the way that you move into marketing plans and the way that you market your shows. So let's do that. We'll get something happening so that you've got a basic starting point that isn't overwhelming, that isn't too crazy and in depth. You download some of these marketing plans and marketing strategies off the web, and they're just 30 pages long, and you just don't even bother. So we want to just start simple. So I'll try and rework. I've been thinking about it for a while, of reworking something into almost like a one-page document that summarizes a strategy goal, a strategy plan. So we'll look at doing that. We'll hook that up in the show notes and the description. So jump in there, grab yourself that, and start thinking at the next level and in bigger picture terms, because without that, you're not going to really start seeing traction over time in the ability to grow your audience, your reputation, and your ability to influence within the creative sphere. So how's that sound? Let's do that.
Sounds great.
Yeah, great. All right. Thank you, Sheryl-Lee, once again for being here. Guys, thanks so much for watching. And of course, if this is of use for you, it's probably going to be of use to somebody else that you know. So please share it with them, tag them in the comments, whatever it is you can do to pay it forward so we can keep helping each other out. Spread the news and spread the help so that we can all win, because there is room enough for us all to win. So let's do that. And I'll see you on the next episode.
That's all it is. And it's usually it really is a lot simpler than we think it is.
Yeah.
We don't work through it, do we?
No, but it's that I think we're not taught how to make it simple.
Yeah.
Where you see videos on YouTube that are, social media marketing and how to do Instagram right and how to do YouTube right and how to do Facebook right and all this stuff and all these things that these people that have been doing it for years and built great big audiences do, because they know it works. And obviously, they're winning for a reason. They've gotten it right. But often we just need start here, do this one thing, and then when you think you've got that 70% right, add this second thing. There's a great book that came out a little while ago called The One-Page Marketing Plan, and it's a book this thick, it's an inch thick, all about how to do a marketing. Maybe not an inch thick, maybe it's only a half inch, but it's about how to do a one-page marketing plan. And he's actually basically written that off the back of Dean Jackson's 8 Profit Activators, which is what I use for my business. And I was like, "Oh, you cheeky guy!" But he's good friends with Dean, so I'm sure it's all kosher. But it is. It's finding that simple way, and it's so hard for us to accept the truth of target markets. It's so hard. We don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
We just don't.
We feel like we're letting go or losing something if we just, niche in.
Yeah.
Narrow it in. Yeah.
Yes,
and just don't understand that we can't reach them if we're trying to go too wide.
No, that's it. And it's a really great phrase that I've heard someone use. It was probably Dean Jackson or Joe Polish or one of these guys. But the question of, do you want 100% of people to go 1% of the way, or even 10% of the way? Or do you want 10% of the people to go 100% of the way? which one is better for you?
Go
Because
deep, not wide.
yeah. Well, and the minute
Yeah.
you've got the depth working, you can add another level. You can add another one. You can get that. Just get one right first. And that's so the philosophy that I'm trying to apply to what I'm doing now. And even still, I know I had this conversation yesterday where I went, you know what? I made that rule for myself that I was going to pick a single target market. And even I've deviated from that in the stuff I've done in the last 6 months.
I think we all do, and I think that's what spring cleaning is about.
Yeah.
We do.
But I'd
It's a
convinced
shiny
myself it was for the same target market. But when I really sat and went, it's not. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.